So this film is one of those rare cases where the sequel is definitely better than the original. Talking about Smile Part 2, written and directed by Parker Finn and starring Naomi Scott as Skye Riley. But before we get into the review, you know what to do. Be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you know when I drop the next reviews. So this film, essentially, it's the same as the first one, but also different. We have the same demon or entity that is running the same trick. And if you need a refresher, which, first of all, let me say this, I won't give spoilers right away. They will come a little bit later. And the reason for that, I waited purposely about a week since release so that most people will have seen it by now. And at this point, I can give a spoiler review and pretty much be safe because either one, you've seen the film already, or two, you've seen so many reviews that at this point, you pretty much know everything there is to know. However, I still want to give my own review, which again, I waited so that I could freely give spoilers. But again, I'll give them a little bit later on. This won't be a long review because it's pretty simple information. So recap of the first one, right? There's this demon that basically takes over your mind, which forces you to end yourself in front of someone else. I'm just trying to be careful. I don't know if I can say the K word, or like if I have to wait a certain amount of minutes before I can say it on YouTube without getting in trouble. Anyway, you know what I mean? Yeah, so the demon will possess you, make you end yourself in front of someone else. And when they see it, they then become infected by this or possessed by this same demon who over the course of about a week pretty much drives you insane, right? You're hallucinating the entire time. It's kind of like the worst acid trip ever, right? And then generally around that 6th or 7th day is when it completely takes over you. You then off yourself in front of somebody. And so the cycle continues. So since that's the gist of it, I'll go ahead and start the spoiler portion right now. We start part 2 with the character Joel, the cop from the end of part 1. He's gone into what looks like this trap house. Remember, following the events of part 1, he sees Rose, I believe her name was. He sees her in herself in front of him. So we start part 2 about a week later. And I love how they made sure that we knew that this was pretty much right after the events of part 1. Again, we start with the character Joel going into this trap house, and it looks like his plan was to end himself in front of some thugs or gangsters or whatever. And I'm guessing his logic on that was these are already bad people. So if I pass this thing to one of them, no harm, no foul. But at the end of the day, this is something that is going to continue regardless. So I kind of understand what he was going for, but at the same time, I don't know. But anyway, so that plan doesn't work out, right? I don't know why he thought he was going to go in there and cause all this damage and no one was going to give him any opposition, but it doesn't work out the way that he wants it to work out. From the trailer, we see this guy, I think his name is Lukas Gage in the movie. In the trailer, we see him smash this 45-pound weight in his face. In the beginning, he's in the trap house with Joel, right? So some people arrive that Joel was not expecting. He ends up killing the other 2 people that were in there. Lukas Gage is still left in the house. Here's a point that as I was watching the movie, I could not wait to get to the point where it was time for my review so that I could say this. And if anyone knows better than I know, please tell me in the comments, because I really don't feel like I missed it, but I may have, right? So Joel jumps out of the window and he runs to the street. This is the part from the trailer where somebody gets hit by a truck, and then we see the bloody smile blood smear in the road. That was Joel. From what we've seen, you have to end yourself in order to pass this thing to someone else. Here is a major plot hole with this situation. And I'm skipping way to the end of the movie with this when I say this, but it goes with this, so it has to be said. Naomi Scott's character, Skye, meets a man who knows all about this demon because he's lost loved ones to this same situation. He's done research and he's learned what is happening. He knew that Louis Fragoli was possessed before he died. These things are said in the movie. And he goes to meet Louis, but instead sees Skye leaving. His whole point for approaching Skye was because he had found out, or based on his theory, that if you die from causes other than self-inflicted, the demon would basically end, right? Because the whole purpose is that you finish yourself in front of somebody else. Pause, because that sounded weird. But you end yourself in front of someone else. That is how the demon then latches onto them, and this curse keeps going. His whole point was that if we can stop your heart, thus causing you to die by other means, this should stop, right? This is the whole point. Okay, let's go back to the beginning. Joel is hit by a truck trying to escape the unexpected people that showed up at the trap house. This is how he dies. Apparently, Louis must have been watching from the window when Joel got hit by the car. That's a plot hole, right? The only way that that's not a plot hole, and I forgot the guy's name, the only way that that's not a plot hole is if the guy who met up with Skye for the whole purpose of stopping her heart and blah, 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 he would have had to be wrong. That's the only thing that makes sense. His theory would have to be correct. But you spent time hinging a large part of the narrative of the film on that. So which one is it, right? If you die by other causes, is it over or is it not? Okay, so let's skip past Joel. Well, first of all, that's really honestly, that's my biggest gripe about the entire film. The fact that made absolutely no sense. And then you turn around and you introduce the fact that if you die by other means, then it should end, right? It just seems like it rendered that entire first scene pointless. Also, I want to note the movie starts nicely. Like, it starts in a very action-packed fashion. Joel goes over to this trap house ready for business, right? We get this amazing one shot that happens with him getting out of the truck and then getting into the house. And that opening scene is so dope. The movie is very long. It's a beautiful movie, very well done movie. But the jump scares are plenty. They weren't the cheap jump scares, but I know I'm going to be in the minority when I say this. This movie for me was like a haunted house. When you go in a haunted house, you know what to expect. You know that pretty much around every corner, somebody's going to jump out. It's the whole purpose of the haunted house. That's what this film felt like. This film, it felt like a haunted house. Every chance that they had to make something jump out, it was jumping out. Way more jump scares than the first film. Again, they weren't cheap. They did add value to the story because remember, this demon, it makes you lose your mind, right? So when the music is unsettling and the visuals are unsettling, if this person is losing their mind and they're hallucinating and seeing things it makes sense to keep the audience on the edge of our seats by introducing various jump scares so that we feel the same sort of uneasiness that the character is feeling. But there were just so many of them. I mean, the terror factor, it relied solely on jump scares because the film itself is not scary. Even when you see the demon, it's the same, of course, the same demon from the first one at the very end, this huge, weird looking thing. It's not a scary sight, right? But because of the jump scares, that's what keeps your heart pounding. That's what keeps your heart racing. It's the jump scares. But I actually enjoyed the story. I'll tell you what made me upset, though. We don't have any real backstory on that demon. So in this film, remember, as I said a second ago, when I was tying in the events from the first part of the movie to the guy who thought that they could stop Skye's heart, he's the only way that we get some sort of lore on this demon. And the biggest buzzkill about the entire thing is that the demon wins. Again, the demon wins. Part 3 seems possible because of the fact that the demon wins. But I was really rooting for part 2 to finish this thing off, to give us some real lore, allow this man's theory to work, and finally we defeat the demon. But instead, what we get is a very obvious defeat for the protagonist. So what happens is, again, the gentleman meets up with Skye and he says, if we can stop your heart, we can kill this thing. Because when I stop your heart, you're dead. It has no one to further latch onto. I'll keep you dead for 8 minutes, then I'll bring you back. Because we can keep you out up to 9 minutes before you experience permanent brain damage. That was the plan. We come to find out that about 3/4 of the film have been hallucinated. I saw it seconds before it happened. Let me explain. There's a part in the very beginning, well, not the very beginning, but first act, where Riley is Skye Riley, same thing. She's getting dressed for a concert. And she has gripes about the costume that she's going to wear because she's got scars from a car accident that she had. She doesn't want those to show, and she felt like they could show through the costume. On the stage was like I think it's called an Iron Maiden. This is not what that was, but it puts me in the mind. I think it's called an Iron Maiden. The little torture chamber thing from like medieval times. There was something on stage that was meant for her to like pop out of in this awesome way, and the smoke would come out or whatever. That thing was open during that time, so I was able to see the designs on the inside. So third act, last 5 minutes. This is when we realize that for the back half of Act 1, all of Act 2, and the first half of Act 3, that she's been hallucinating this entire time, because she wakes up and she's inside of the little prop thing. And again, I can see the designs on the inside, so I'm like, yo, no way. I was so irritated. I'm like, no way. She's been hallucinating this entire freaking time. Sure enough, the thing opens and she's on stage. And it's that same costume from way in Act 1 where she was complaining about being able to see through it. So I'm like, you're telling me that this entire time, this girl has been hallucinating. And it ends as you would expect when that happens. She goes out on stage, the demon finishes its possession, and she freaking stabs herself in the eye with her microphone. So what does that mean? Her entire audience is now infected. I can't even imagine what part 3 would be like given that scenario. I guess one way would be you could pick a protagonist that was at the concert but has nothing to do with Skye. You can reintroduce the theory that if you die by means other than self, we should be able to stop this thing, right? But look how many people. I mean, this is a full house. This is a sold out arena. That's one way. But then also there's this note. Even though part 1, we were following Rose. Part 2, we're following Skye. The events of part 2 are directly associated with the events of part 1. But who said that the protagonists from each film are the only ones who are affected by this curse, right? This could be going on anywhere. So at the same time, there's endless routes that could be taken, endless paths that could be taken for a part 3. But to be honest, I'm okay simply believing that the demon has won and this is going to go on forever. Nobody's ever going to win, because that's too many extra chains that have now been made. You have to believe that this demon is now more powerful than ever. Well, at least once we get to the 5 or 6 sixth day mark with all of these people, we have to, because this type of stuff in these sorts of movies, they strengthen the demon. So we have to believe that after the events of part 2, this thing is just OP. So that's kind of it. You know, that's pretty much where that ends and where this ends. So Smile part 2. Have you seen it? Do you intend to see it? What did you think about it? Definitely jump down in those comments and let me know. Also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you know when I drop the next reviews. See y'all next time.